So now we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna take a step back. We're gonna look at our pose the model is in. And right off the bat, I remember how I started. So I set that boundary up in here. Forgive me, I am at an angle. Set that boundary over here. And that's just a starting point. You don't have to rely on this the entire time. It's just a starting point. I do remember there was this lean in here where that rib cage was. There's that one there. The leg kind of comes out this way. And then you have that tilt of the rib cage. Oh, this is gonna be a little hard, but that's okay. That's okay. I have that a little bit going on. Because the rib cage tilts this way, the hips will tilt in the opposite direction. That's typically how those two boxes work. Much better, much better. So we have a little start going on. We're thinking of how the rhythm is being followed throughout the position. I'm gonna go ahead and say that this kind of comes down this way. This leg kind of tucks back. This leg goes down. It's possible that this is a little too close, so we're gonna push this a little bit further. I'm gonna put that leg here. Now, this leg follows this line, and you don't have to go to the contour and like try to draw the contour out, but this knee goes all the way straight through that little portion of the neck, right? I can't really get that because I don't have where the head is or where the neck is. So what do? I'm gonna put the head in place so that way I have a reference for it. And I'm gonna also go ahead and put the chair that she was on. Because believe it or not, that chair helps guide us in a direction that will give us context for the position, for the pose. That chair is a part of the composition. It's a part of the way the body's being affected in the pose. So that chair will help us reference proportion, it will help us reference anatomy, and it'll give us the information needed. For instance, like if she wasn't sitting on this part of the chair, then her leg wouldn't be compressed. So that little information of her sitting on the chair tells us that her leg is being compressed. It's overlapping the other leg, putting it in perspective. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in, right? And again, these are abstract shapes. Same way we construct the figure, it's just abstract. Put that in there. This probably comes in a little bit more, right? And I noticed that this part of the fabric lines up all the way to that acromion. So I could probably push it back even more. Probably push this back a little bit. And we're just getting a general idea. We're just putting down shapes and lines and trying to get an accurate read on the proportion. Now that front of the head doesn't really have a reference point, but we can still gauge. It does kind of have a reference point right here. So I can still gauge where that is, just a little bit. This is where that hip comes out. This probably goes down a little bit lower. Give it a little bit more room. Your shapes don't have to be accurate immediately. They're not supposed to be. If you were perfect at everything the first time you tried it, then what's the point in doing it, right? I will admit, this is a little difficult trying to do this at this angle. I can probably go ahead and put this foot down a little bit. This leg comes down in here. So I got this part of the leg from the shoulder. Now that's not the actual size and shape of the leg, but it's a reference point for me to follow later, right? I can reference this top of the thigh. That'll come out straight through the shoulder. And you know what? That line kind of matches up where that shadow shape is in here. So I can put this line all the way down, and that big line there tells me everything I need to know right in there. And I can put this part of the leg in shadow because it is in shadow. And go ahead, just wipe this out just a little bit, just to where that thigh is or ends. I can bring this out just a little bit more. And when I put that there, I'm still referencing a bigger line. And that bigger line still connects to that shadow shape. And it probably moves up a little bit. This probably moves up a little bit at a steeper angle, maybe. I know this part of the leg is in shadow. So I know that there's a shadow shape in here that comes to the tip of the head, but that head isn't put in place. It's not solid yet, so I probably shouldn't go for that. So now that we're here in this position, let's take a step back. Let's look at our drawing. Let's think to ourselves, what's next? What would be next here? We could adjust some of the proportions. Like for instance, this is a little bit big, just slightly. And that thigh doesn't perfectly line up with that line, so we could push that in. But everything else is so behind this area. So what can I look to next to develop to get somewhere closer to where this is currently? As I'm looking, I think maybe that head could probably be a little bit more. Right. Probably just adjust it a little bit. This is where the back of that arm is. Probably push this a little bit back. Right. That shadow shape in here. That's where the jaw is. We can bring this shoulder out a little bit. Bring that arm down. And there is that little shadow shape where the arm connects with the body. And the way this arm lays on the ribcage is very soft. It's very elegant. This is a very soft and elegant pose, but I like the way this arm lays. And then the forearm just kind of rolls over the form. The way we make, or we do this pose justice, is by thinking of how that anatomy is affected by the other parts of the pose. We don't have to go into that right now, but something to keep in mind, something to think about. You don't have to push too far too quickly. I noticed that this part of the hip is a little far back. This is a little thick in here, so let's go ahead and thin that up. Right. This part of the thigh kind of juts out. We can go slow, we can go fast. What matters is that our understanding of the pose is there. There's this beautiful moment in the legs in here where this hits, this extends, and there's this kind of arrow pointing down. That moment, it's very beautiful. I want to capture that. In order to capture that though, I have to think, okay, this is at a certain angle. That angle kind of comes up to the middle of the head. The head probably gets a little bit taller. And there's a slight angle down. This comes down a little bit, right? This will come down. This will come down this way. And I gotta think, where does this bend happen? This little bend happens right above the knee. I mean, where does that line up with? That lines up right about where this piece of cloth hits the floor. So if I take a look, this is that end of the knee. That's where the cloth is, and look at that. Right where that bend happens. That's how you make your drawing cohesive. There are bits and pieces that will connect to other spots. You have to find those moments and connect them. Okay, so where does this bend of the knee happen? Where does that bend of the knee happen? Or even right here, this little bend. That's pretty damn close to where the bend of the seat happens. So that's where I'm gonna put that bend. All right, so where does this toe or this foot meet? I mean, it's kind of hard to tell there, but we can look at the back of the heel. It happens just after the bend here. So we can put that back of the heel there and just put like a nice little angle for where that foot is. It's like grounding your drawing. It's grounding the figure in your drawing. I'm noticing that there's a bit more of a gesture in here. So I'm gonna push this a little bit further. Maybe bring this shorter a little bit. This neck kind of comes in. Her neck was a little bit on the shorter side, I would say. Bring that out just a little bit more. So something I'm not translating very well. It's the way the shoulder sits on that chair, on the back of that chair. And normally, if this tilt is happening, that shoulder would probably be somewhere around here, which is where it currently is. But because it's resting on top of that chair, it's gonna be pushed up. So I have to bring that shoulder up a bit. And you know what? Because it pulls the arm up and makes this look longer. So that angle is probably what I'm missing in here. So I'm gonna push that up a little bit. And that top of the back of the chair, that's where the hand is currently. It's gonna line up just above where this bend happens. That hand, it's like right about here. Yeah. And this is where the breasts were. I'm gonna bring this up even more. It already looks like it's resting on the back of that chair a bit more. You have a nice little gesture where the head is. And it kind of comes in this way. And that back of the head kind of lined up right where the rib cage is. This here is a center line I can follow because the tilt of the rib cage is this way. And I can follow that center line all the way down through the pelvis. And that is valuable and reliable information. But I know that this thigh ends right about there. It's probably a little bit more compressed than even that. I know that line kind of comes across and it hits where that is, so it's probably like really right about here. That thigh kind of comes out this way. At this point, I can probably go into some shadow shape just to help me be a bit more descriptive about what I'm seeing. I'm going to use some terp. Just a tiny bit. You don't need a lot of terp, ever. You don't ever need a lot of terp. And just be a little bit more descriptive about my drawing. I'm going to darken up my current shadow shapes. Again, just a shape. Just a shape. I'm not worrying about those little nitpicky anatomy pieces just yet. I tend to think about the anatomy as I'm going through, sometimes to my faults. It's not always the best route to go and think about anatomy as you're drawing, especially in the beginning. And with a pose like this, it's probably better to be more abstract about it. I'm just going to go ahead and say it is better. It is better to be more abstract in a pose like this, because that abstraction is going to be stronger than anything you can put with anatomy. And the anatomy only works because the abstraction is so strong in the beginning. It's not bad. That's not bad. Kind of like that. Sometimes when I do these demos with a painting I've already made, I feel like the demos are better in a way, because it's like I'm practicing throughout the day with my painting, and when I come back to revisit it, it's already much more informed. And it never will hurt to get a little bit extra practice. I'm gonna bring this down. Okay, that's where the knee is. I'm gonna bring this in just a little bit, because that kind of lines up right where the back of the head is, right? Now I'm gonna push this a little bit in. I know through my first drawing, I had that a little bit wide. So this would be a great point to look at your drawing and ask, what do I do next? What am I looking for? So what am I looking for? Right now, we're gonna start adjusting proportions to be able just a little bit more accurate. Bring this up a little bit more. And that line, I don't know if you can tell, kind of comes up here. I got a little bit higher than what it was, but that's gonna come right there, and then bend where the rib cage is. That's part of how we lean into that gesture. Make sure that we get that accurate. And we don't want to adjust this leg and lose that gesture of the leg, because as I do that, I notice that it's too thick. So I'm going to push this part of the leg up. That's the back of the calf, just about. The back of the calf kind of meets up with the front of the knee. So that is about right. I'm gonna place a marker where that hits. And I did notice that knee that comes out here lines up with that shoulder. So if I go here, I can push out that knee right there. Just ever so slightly. It doesn't even have to be much. But I know that knee kind of comes out here. And then it kind of tilts out, comes back in. That's a little bit more dramatic, so we're going to adjust that. Remember, this leg only looks longer because it's attached to the side of the pelvis that's jutting out a little bit. And we can put this little marker, that's where that pubis symphysis was, just about. Pubis symphysis is the front of the pelvis, right where the bowl kind of like meets at a V. And that hand kind of comes out just a little bit. I'm going to place a marker where the hand was. I'm just going to put that there. It's just a placeholder for where the hand is. I think this forearm kind of comes up. Remember, this is where that hip comes out. I'm gonna go ahead and solidify this shadow because it's a little atmospheric right now. It's a little not firm enough. That's better. That's better. So I'm gonna raise this a little bit. I'll bring this at a little bit more of an angle. Right. We're gonna go ahead, put the shadow. I swear, I keep getting confused with the tip of my brush versus the end of it. This kind of like, there's a little shadow shape that came up here. A little thing that happened there. I'm gonna just put that there, just as a reference point. Remember, these are just shapes, lines. We're getting an idea of how this pose is working. I'm gonna overstate these shadows. Remember, when we overstate our shadows, it allows us to draw out the anatomy later. It allows us to think about it anatomically when we draw out those lights. And here, I know that my sign is just a little bit higher. Can you take me higher? You can probably pull this out just a little bit. That's where the abdomen kind of crunches in on itself. And this is where the costal arch hits right in there. And that costal arch is, so if this is, let's just go ahead and draw this as a box, the rib cage. Right. Let's do that. The rib cage kind of comes up at this upward facing angle. Right? This is not the shape of your rib cage. The shape of your rib cage kind of just like comes down. It's like where the neck is. It'll come down this way. It'll come down this way. And then at the center line here, it splits off at the bottom of the sternum. That's your costal arch. This section in here, that's your costal arch. And it'll come down and it'll just wrap around here. And this will come back this way. It'll wrap underneath. But when we take a look at this center line, right in here, that center line, your rib cage will split off right in there. Now that split in the costal arch pushes the skin out. And when that happens, it'll create this little shadow shape underneath where it happens. I don't know if you can tell, but like, let's go ahead and like push this a little bit further. That's where that costal arch hits. Right in there. And that'll cause the abdomen to kind of flex under just a little bit because that costal arch pushes up on the skin and causes the light to hit it. And that's what I mean when I say thinking about the anatomy when drawing out the lights. Because that's where that costal arch is here. And that sternum pushes up this way. And the breast will attach to that, the side of the pectoralis. And this part of the pec, here, I'll show you in a second. This part of the pec here, that wraps underneath into the armpit. And that's a shadow of the breast in there. It could probably go a little bit lower, if I'm being honest. It could probably go just a little bit lower. Bring that breast down. We could probably push it this way a little bit. Because I remember in the pose, her chest was front facing, while that pelvis and legs were facing away. So we can go ahead and push, because this gets pushed this way a little bit, so does this breast. So I can probably just move that center line just a little bit. And I remember, because that center line kind of matches up with the mastoid all the way to the back of the head, this is where that mastoid would be. So maybe push it back just a little bit. And the only reason it looks that way is because the thickness of the brush. So we can push this back just a little bit, and that's where that sternum is. So we're getting a pretty good idea of the anatomy as we're drawing out the lights. Thinking this way about your drawing will only ground it and then make it more structured. So we have this nice area in here that's being drawn out. I remember that the pit of the neck was a little bit higher. Her hair was like coming down this way. That's about right for the angle of the face. Ear kind of came out this way. It's a little too much, so we're going to go back into it. Right. And her hand was over the edge of the back of the chair there. And I'm just drawing that out with a simple shape. Simple shape. Hands are a very difficult thing to draw. Everyone knows that. If you want to be an artist, hands are fucking difficult. The best way to construct a hand is to think about it the same way you're thinking about the figure, just abstract shapes. And you don't have to describe the hand completely either. That's one of the things it's hard to learn, because the hand is so intricate. There's so much information. But if you learn to simplify the hand, it comes out stronger than you could even think of portraying if you were trying to put in all of the information the hand provides. Simplifying, using simple shapes to describe something is far stronger than providing as much information as possible for it. It's like study notes. If your subject is psychology, are you going to go through every single study that's ever happened, or are you going to go through the highlights of it and discern from the highlights of the study to grab your notes, right? So we're just making a note of the figure. We're writing our notes. We're simplifying the information that we see, and we're disseminating that information to the eye. I could probably bring that right breast down a little bit. I could probably bring both down a little bit. Just a little bit. We can still continue to think about that anatomy and how it affects the body. I think this was a little bit higher. And the back of the heel is sticking out a little bit. Put that foot down at the angle. Again, foot is just an abstract shape. That's the top of the plane of the foot. Then the toes kind of like come in at an angle. The big toe sits here. The heel is right there at the top of that. Right. Just another shape, series of shapes and lines. That leg is probably too long, that calf. So I'm gonna simplify that, bring it up a bit, and just repeat the process. I could probably bring this up, because I brought this part up, so I need to bring that up a little bit. Keep the proportions in check. I know that. There's this angle in here, the side, top plane of the calf. Bring that in a little bit. And now I'm just getting a general sense of the proportion, right? I think the head may be a little bit big. And if you can tell that something is off, ask yourself, why is it off? So why does that head look a little bit big to me? And if I look at it from this point of view, I see it mostly in the neck. That neck looks a little thick. Why does that neck look thick? The shoulders seem a little bit broad. So I'm gonna bring those shoulders in. I'm gonna bring that arm in because I brought that shoulder in. And I know she had thin arms. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place a line there to convey thinner arms. I'm gonna ensure and it follows all the way through. That looks a little too thin, so I'm gonna bring it back out. That looks about right. And that looks like it's laying on the body a little bit better too. So I'm gonna bring this up. Right. Okay. And then this side needs to get a little bit thinner as well. And bring that forward. I can bring that hand in a little bit. Look at that. Much better. I know that this was one of the folds in the fabric. There's a fold here and a fold there. And there's this big shadow shape in here. All right. Let's put some turp on that. And this is just a shape as well. But this shape in here is going to help us see the rest of the drawing for what it is. There's this like shadow shape in here. And that in there. So we're kind of constructing a little bit better. Now that head looks a little too big because I brought in the shoulders. So what am I going to do? I'm going to thin out the head just a little bit. That neck looks a little thick as well. But I'm gonna bring that neck in just a little bit. Maybe that's a little too much. I know the neck was at this angle here, so that angle in there. And if bringing it in on one side makes it look way off, then what you need to do is go back to the other side and fix it. And bring that other side in, or out, or whichever direction you moved it. And we can go back in and we can reestablish our shadow shapes, solidify them a little bit more. Right. A little oopsie there, but oopsies can go bye-bye. So I know that this light kind of comes over there. That's where that hit. There's a little angle in here that shows the edge of the glute hitting the chair. So at this point, I don't think it's all the way there yet. I don't think I can go into values just yet. Sometimes you get a feeling, all right? You just look at it and you're like, something's not right. Something's not right. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to translate? Just a little bit more. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's you thinking, you know? That's you getting a good idea of what you're seeing and trying to make the best of it. I could probably probably move this down. Remember, the pelvis is over here. That's where it connects. That's where this leg connects. This is where the pubis symphysis was. Go over your basics, go over like little bits of anatomy. Get it more accurate. You'll probably bring this thigh a little higher up just to show that it's overlapping the other. Right, look at that. Remember, we are kind to ourselves in making these corrections. I think I've said it before, but JFK said that an error does not become a mistake until one refuses to correct it. And all a drawing is a series of corrections, so you literally cannot make any mistakes in a drawing. You're just correcting your errors. There's a bit of perfection in that. You get the chance to correct yourself over and over again, and that is beautiful. There are no mistakes in drawings. I really like this moment that's happening in this leg in here, because that knee comes out exactly at the angle that it should. This will come in, so that's the side of the shin there, and the calf will kind of jut out just a little bit. And that looks a little thick. That's okay, because I know it kind of comes into the knee a little bit. And that knee kind of goes in. This kind of comes in just a little bit, just before the heel. I could probably thin out that calf. That's a strong leg right there. At this point, I can get just a little bit more accurate with my anatomy. I can solidify my shadow shapes just a little bit more. We are patient with our drawings. There's no point in not being patient. If you rush through your drawing, it's just going to be one big blob, one big mess. The structure won't be there. The love will be gone. There is a bit of a meditation to drawing. It puts you into your own body, makes you think of how your structure works. And this highlight in this deltoid here, that happens because that shoulder sits on top of the back of the chair, pushes that shoulder up facing the light. That's where that highlight comes from. Something I could do. I could go into the light and draw out some of the light. Because we are getting into values in class. So remember how we just thought about and drew out the anatomy with the paper towel? And we got our lights out, thought about that anatomy. We're going to do the same thing with the paint. We're doing the same exact thing, but with paint. And we're using gray tones to do that. So right in here, I have this affinity for legs for some reason. I think legs are just very interesting. The same thing with the back. I think the back is one of the most nuanced parts of the body. But for now, we're going to focus on the legs. So there's this muscle. There is this muscle that attaches from the aces. Here, I'll draw it out, actually. Your pelvis is like this, bucket, right? And it kind of comes in at a V. And there are these sides of your pelvis right here. Shit. Right, so here, up here, on the top of the sides of your pelvis, that is known as the ASIS, anterior superior iliac spine. That's what it stands for. Now the ASIS has a muscle that will attach to it, known as a sartorius. So in the context of a leg, if I were to draw legs from this, that muscle is going to wrap around from the leg, go all the way on the inside, and wrap around and hook towards the knee. That muscle comes all the way around, and then it disappears. When you're looking straight at it from the side, like from here, it'll come all the way around and disappear behind the knee on the other side. So from here, from this leg here, let's go ahead and put this ship on. That ASIS is going to come all the way around. It's going to tuck into the inside of the knee there. Or that sartorius. We'll hit the ASIS, wrap around the leg, wrap around the knee. And up top, we have our quad muscles that quite literally just like hook in right up top. And this part of the knee in here, it's patella, it's just tendinous muscles, or a tendinous attachment. And it's sort of like a hard plane on the top of your knee. This is your quad in here, sartorius wraps around, quad attaches to that, and then you have these adductor muscles on the inside, underneath the sartorius. So thinking of those muscles while drawing out the light will help you construct the figure, and in a very structured way. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more solid and firm your drawings look. That's the knee right in there. That's the top of the knee. That's the patella. It goes down into the tibia. That ASIS, or that sartorius will wrap around. It will wrap around. And then your quads will come out here. This is your quad in there. And right here, you have your gluteus, your tensor fasciolata. Tensor fasciolata, which is the tensor to the iliotibial band. And that connects all the way. Like there's a IT band that comes all the way right here. That's the iliotibial, right? And right next to that is your gluteus medius, which will attach to the gluteus maximus. In here, remember, you have the costal arch. Kind of comes up, and that will kind of hook right there. You have your sternum right in there. That shadow kind of comes in a little bit. That's where the pit of the neck is. And you have your pectoralis that'll come up here. And this is your pectoralis, that little shape in there. And that'll come underneath and hook under the armpit there. And right there, that shadow shape, that's where your collarbone is. So that'll come up here, this way. And right here, that's your acromion process. That's where the deltoid attaches. That's where the collarbone wraps over and comes on the other side and attaches to the scapula. We're bringing out that pectoralis, pec muscles. Probably a little bit longer. I could probably extend this a bit. I'm trying to get out of the way here. And that deltoid is on top of that pec over here. It'll come over and attach to the humerus. I believe that that bone in here is called the humerus. I could be wrong about that. Still learning. Forgive me. That's the biceps brachii here. That'll like hook under. There's a muscle that comes over here and it wraps around the forearm, known as the brachioradialis. That'll wrap around. There's some muscles in here. It's like your extensor digitorum, which are your finger muscles. You see how it like moves there? Those attach to a muscle in here. You can, or here, right here. Yeah, you can feel them. Your tricep on the side. And the tricep is a little interesting. This is a little too unsolid. So I'm gonna clear that up a little bit. And you have the tendon of the triceps that comes down. You have a muscle in between the bicep and the tri. I forget what the name is though. You see how that like drawing out the anatomy in the light registers a stronger drawing, a more structured drawing. So you have the deltoid in here that attaches. Now this is in shadow, so you don't have to really like worry about that. This is here. And that space between is where that collarbone is. And when you draw out these lights, you can connect it. You can connect the pain. But because you are thinking about the anatomy as you draw out these lights, you know where the things go. You know where the muscles go. You know where the bones are. You automatically just like say, oh yeah, that's where that connects. And you can find those little points that'll help you in your drawing. This is where the abdomen is in here. It kind of connects, and then the oblique kind of comes in here and it wraps around through here. There's the abdomen that comes in here. This little line in here is where the oblique hits. The abdomen comes underneath. See how that works? It's real nice. Yeah, as your anatomy develops, you'll notice that there are certain plane shifts that are caused by the anatomy. So that breast protrudes from the pectoralis and catches more light. That deltoid protrudes because it sits on the back of the chair and catches the light. Now down here, it's more shadowy because it's away from the light. It's just one more step in developing your drawings, you know? All right, I think I'm gonna end it there for today. We have a lot of information covered. I think we all did a very good job. If you weren't here in the beginning, my name is Anthony. I go to school at an art atelier known as Studio Incaminati in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Thank you for watching.